Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris and today we're in a little bit different setting here as I visit my parents in the Midwest. And I wanted to show you my parents' neighbor's garden that they put into the backyard of my parents' house. This is their very first garden that they've done. I don't have them here with me to kind of give a tour, but they gave me a tour privately a couple of days ago. And I just kind of wanted to show you what they've done and how amazing they're doing for their very first garden. And I also want to give just a little bit of surprise because there is a vegetable here that I've never actually grown myself, but I have seen it in stores and in other places, farmers markets and things like that. But I have never seen it quite like this. And if you stick around, you'll see why I find these absolutely amazing. So here is the backyard. They have done such a great job with the usage of space. So they have this big main area here, and then along the fence line they put corn, and they planted beans in here with the corn. It's kind of hard to tell in some instances just because the weeds are very plentiful. But there is beans in here and they're actually doing quite well. Then on the other side of this garden shed right here, amongst all of this is watermelon. There's a few pretty nice ones in here. They're not real big. I'm not sure what variety this is, but I can tell you that these are definitely not ready to be picked. I'm guessing these will probably get to be a good 6 or 7 pounds. There's another one in here. There could be some more in here, the neighbor said, but it's a little overgrown and they haven't quite gone through it. Then along this fence line here, they put tomatoes and tomatillos. So there's all different types in here, from slicing tomatoes to paste tomatoes. And then, of course, these little tomatillos. So we were talking about these the other day, and the neighbor was not sure when to tell when they're ripe and they're ready to be picked. So for tomatillos, you want the tomatillo to have grown big enough to fill this husk. Right now, if you squish it, it just kind of feels empty. There's a little something in there, but it's not very big. And when that tomatillo that's inside here fills this entire husk, it'll be ready to be picked. In addition to this fence line full of tomatoes, over here by the back deck, they put some more tomatoes. And these, I think there's some slicers and some cherry tomatoes over here. And they have an extreme problem with morning glories. So if you think about planting morning glories, just know they will take over and you'll never get rid of them. One thing I want to note here, you see these beetles? These are Japanese beetles. These are not your friend. I think when I get done filming this, I'll probably just go grab some soapy water and come out and take care of those bugs for them. All I'm going to do is take a jar of soapy water and push those bugs right into the soapy water. The soap will prevent them from being able to escape the water, and they'll die. Along the other side of the fence is all the cucumbers. So one thing that they noted when they were talking about these cucumbers is how fast they grow. They have them all along this other side of the fence as well. And one thing, if you've never grown a cucumber before, to note that one day they will be a pretty small size. Let's see if I can find one here. So one day they'll be this size. And then it feels like the next day they're this size. Or, even worse, they've started to yellow, which means they're overly mature and they're not going to be very good. At that point, you can either let them completely mature and save the seeds, or in my parents' neighbor's case, they've just been taking those cucumbers and tossing them to the side and letting the rabbits eat them. They said the rabbits are going to visit their garden anyway. There is no way to keep them out of it. So if they take things like that and make the sacrifice to the rabbits, the hope is that the rabbits will leave the rest of the plants alone. And I believe so far it seems to be working out pretty well for them, so that's a great idea. Back into the main garden area, they've harvested quite a bit. The cabbage is mostly harvested. I think they might have a couple more heads in there. This whole line down here is all zucchini and yellow squash. I really don't think they knew what they were getting themselves into when they planted this many plants. When I first arrived here, there was so much squash on here. There's no way that a family can eat that many squash. And they're only a family of 5. And my parents, well, we ate a couple of them while we were here. We had them in a pasta, but they're not big squash eaters. So they're not really helping out with the abundance of squash problem. So I know that they've been sharing. Here's one yellow squash that is just massive. Here's a couple more in here that are actually really good sizes. Those should be picked. And we have some zucchini here. This one, it kind of looks like the pollination might not have been completed. So if you see, it's really skinny up here and kind of fat over here. And that tends to be a pollination problem. The one below it that's really big has that same issue. Not quite as bad as the smaller one. They're still perfectly edible to eat. So if you see that problem, don't let that discourage you from using them. It's only a complete fail if there's no pollination at all. You will notice that there hasn't been any pollination when the fruit just kind of withers up and dies. Here's another incredibly massive, well-pollinated zucchini. I picked a couple of them the other day, and I think my mom and I are going to make some zucchini bread tonight with them, just so that they don't go to waste. Here's a really nice head of purple cabbage. I think that's the only one that they haven't picked yet. Oh, there's another one that hasn't been picked yet. And it looks like they have 3 more that haven't been picked. So I guess I was wrong. They have several out here that haven't been picked that look really great. I was telling them the other day that cabbage stores really nicely if you store it in the fridge. Generally, it will last a few months if you store it correctly. They can go ahead and pick these when they're ready to go, and if they store them correctly, they'll have them for several months. I also let them know that they can also plant a fall crop if they'd like. So at this point, they would want to go ahead and get them started, or if they're starting from starts, they have a little bit more time to go pick them up from the store and get them planted. And they'll have another nice crop of cabbage in the fall. They planted some broccoli in here too, but as you can see, it's all flowered. Turns out that they planted a little more than their family could eat, and they couldn't keep up with it before this happened. That happens. That's actually really common for your first garden, because you don't ever really know exactly what your family's going to eat, how much of it they're going to eat. So sometimes trial and error is the perfect way to figure that out. We've got some lovely pepper plants in here. These, I believe, are all jalapeno plants. Some of them have some really nice peppers growing on them. I picked a couple of them the other day, or actually just last night for dinner. They also have some nice bell peppers. They're all still green at this point. Look at that one. This is really nice size. These are all Brussels sprouts here. That's quite a few Brussels sprouts. So I hope their family really loves them. And I think the rest of this garden was beans, but they kind of got taken over by the weeds. And instead of the beans choking the weeds out, the weeds choked the beans out. So they recently planted winter squash here. These, I don't know all of the varieties they picked, but they planted them very recently. Hopefully they have a long enough growing season that these should be fine. But one nice thing about waiting until you're into the summer to plant winter squash or even other squash varieties, tend to miss the largest pests. I honestly don't know what pests that they have here. Obviously they have Japanese beetles. I don't know if they have squash bugs or squash vine borers here or not. But if they do, planting a little bit later in the season is the perfect way to avoid those problems. So I thought that was one thing that was pretty smart, as long as they have the growing season to be able to grow these out fully. Now comes, I think, the highlight of this garden, and that is the kohlrabi. Now, I've never grown kohlrabi, but I know for certain that I have never ever seen kohlrabi this big. They have some planted at the other end that are still pretty good size, but more typical to what I would find in a grocery store. Like, this is pretty typical sizes to what I see in grocery store for kohlrabi. This, however, that one over there, this one, and there are a couple more, some of which the neighbor has picked. One of them that we picked and have enjoyed are probably as big as my head. These have got to be 6, 7, maybe even 8-pound kohlrabis, which are just insane. I had no idea that kohlrabi could even get that big. So this was a huge surprise, and I thought it was really cool, actually. I don't know what variety this is. He wasn't able to tell me. He just said that it was a hybrid variety that they got at a local nursery. So I'm gonna have to research and kind of figure out what this is, because even though these are huge, and normally if you let a vegetable get too big, they don't tend to taste very good. So in theory, these should be really woody and not very tasty, but they're the exact opposite. They're quite tender, but with a nice crunch, with beautiful flavor. I'm just really, really impressed by this kohlrabi. Here's a couple pieces from the kohlrabi that we picked just a couple of days ago and cut up. Still delicious. I'm definitely gonna have to research and figure out what variety of kohlrabi this is. Most of my garden is full of heirlooms. I'm definitely not opposed to hybrids. The only thing about them is that you can't really seed save from them. Well, I guess that's not true. You can seed save from them, but you're not guaranteed to get the same variety that you started with. Because a hybrid is a cross, they took 2 different varieties and crossed them to get this variety. Seeds from this variety are probably going to take different characteristics of those parent plants that were used to create this in the first place. So that's the thing with hybrids. They're not bad, they're not GMO, there's nothing wrong with them whatsoever. You just can't seed save and expect the exact same result from them. So I thank you for joining me today from the beautiful and very hot Iowa for something a little bit different. I really like seeing other people's gardens, seeing what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they're growing, and just learning different ways that people grow food. It's really incredible. So this was a really fun experience to see this garden, and I'm so impressed with how it's doing, especially since this is their first time gardening. This is incredible, and this is a testament that if you have never gardened before, you absolutely can do this. Now, will everything be perfect? No. But I think that's part of the fun. Figuring out what works, what doesn't work. Trying new things. I always try to do something new each year to figure out if something else works better than what I've been doing for years and years. There's always a chance to grow when you're gardening. So if you like this video, please make sure to hit the like button. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. And if you click the bell next to it, you'll get a notification when I upload my next video. So I thank you so much for joining me today here in the Midwest, and I hope to see you next time.